Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about toddler and preschooler big feelings. I'm Dr. Erica Cannell, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. A little bit about me. I'm a board-certified pediatrician at the Redmond Ridge office. Before I went to medical school, I was a 7th grade science teacher in New York City through the Teach for America program. And then I stayed in New York for quite a while. I went to medical school at NYU and I did residency at NYU. And then I was a hospitalist in an ICU in New York in a NICU. So I worked there for a couple of years before coming out to the West Coast. Now I'm in my 9th year of practice at Allegro. And in addition to my job, I'm also a mom to 2 elementary schoolers now that according to my recollection, had next level toddler feelings. This is early in pandemic, a picture of us on a walk that we were taking around the block, and in which something became unacceptable to my oldest kid. Could have been one of any number of things. Maybe got wet in the shoe, maybe his brother derailed his sneaker, so it came off in the back, and we could not move forward until the feelings were finished. We just had to lay down and scream about how unacceptable life was. And so my kids are older now, but they continue to provide me with on-the-ground experience in managing emotions. And so hope you guys get some value out of today's talk. Today, in like big picture, our big feelings framework, I'm going to talk a little bit about toddler development and get kind of specific about what goes on for toddlers as they, in their emotions, as they go from 2, 3 to 4 years old. And then probably what you really showed up for was what are my go-to tools for managing and helping kiddos regulate their feelings. The way that I set this up was to divide my strategies into things that help you before the meltdown, things that help during the meltdown, and things that help after the meltdown to kind of debrief with our kids. And then I have a section on my favorite resources and what to do if you need more support at the end. And then hopefully there'll be still time for some questions. This is just my little, just a little joke about how I feel like every time when my kids are really putting me through the ringer on like with their feelings, that how I feel like most of the time I'm able to stay upright during the actual situation, and then it's after everything is over that nothing like my kids' feelings to bring me to my knees as a fully grown woman. All right. Developmental norms for toddlers and preschoolers. Big picture, like bird's eye view, toddlerhood has really 2 simultaneous and sometimes conflicting needs that are often just tugging against each other. So one is a growing desire for autonomy, and the other is a persistent need for protection. So they're just kind of like moving away from you and then coming back and moving away from you and then coming back. And sometimes that's happening kind of like on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes it feels like it's just really minute to minute. They're just back and forth with what they need, both internally and externally. More specifically for 2-year-olds, 2-year-olds definitely start showing that increased independence, start to seek more autonomy. I love a 2-year-old appointment. I love that wellness visit. It's such a fun time to start seeing your child's personality shine through. Kids, of course, start to say no to everything and really test boundaries, try to test limits, try to figure out where they end and where you start and like what's really allowed. And they have poor control over their emotional impulses. This is why we see their conflicts their conflicts start being solved with hitting, biting, crying. They have a low expressive language capacity, so it can be difficult to tell you what they need and feel with words. They are interested in other kids. And this is when we see what's called parallel play. So you might see your child start to play next to another child. They might even be sitting next to each other, kind of back to back, not really looking at each other. They don't interact with each other. They might not even be playing with the same toy, but like over and over again, they're just drawn to be next to other children. And also 2-year-olds still really want to please their caregivers. So that we can often use to our advantage when we're trying to help them process their feelings. Whereas By the time they turn 3, they start to have a lot more imagination. Their dolls and their stuffies start to have personalities. You might start to see an imaginary friend. They have a lot more time. They spend a lot more time in fantasy play, and we can use fantasy to help them figure out how to manage their own real feelings. 3-year-olds thrive on routine. Things get a lot easier for all of us when our 3-year-olds have a routine, but that comes with the other side of that card, is that they can have big reactions to changes in routine, even if those changes feel exciting. So it can be upsetting if they miss a day of school because they were sick, but it can also be upsetting just because birthdays coming up or holidays change our routine. And so even though it feels like it should be a positive thing, it just routine disruption feels upsetting. And then instead of just parallel play, you start to see associate play. That means playing with the same thing as other kids, but maybe not fully interactive. So they might say to their friend, like, hey, let's go play on the big toy, but they want to slide and their friend wants to swing, and it still counts as being together according to that. By the time they're 4, they start to have more empathy for other people. They start to understand that your feelings and my feelings might be different. And they might want to see a friend crying and give them a hug or kiss a friend's owie. And that's how empathy can show up. They have more cooperative play, so they can start to take turns. They have the capacity to do back and forth playing during the same activity. They start to have magical thinking. They haven't worked out the full difference between fantasy and reality. And so sometimes that can show up as telling stories or lies in particular to try to please their adults. And it's not lying in a way that's like meant necessarily to be deceptive, but they can't really tell that something like, I wish it would have gone this other way. And so I believe that it did. And now I'm telling you about how it went differently than what you saw with your eyes. I think there's nothing like our kids to remind us about, like, well, the work of being a child is to figure out how the world around you works. And since they don't understand it yet, they just spend a lot of time observing and noticing everything. And that means that they live in the present much more than you or I do, who don't have to pay attention to how things work. And that's why taking a walk around the block means that we all come home with our pockets full of rocks. Now, I'm going to talk about the things that we can use as caregivers to help our kids learn to regulate their emotions. A through line to these, like all of these strategies, is both having and building empathy for your child and for yourself. You want to be able to put yourself in their shoes when they're having hard or negative feelings, and that can help us find the patience that we need for them, and also like remind ourselves to be patient with ourselves. Another thing that can really help is to reframe the difficult feelings that our children express as a storm that we have to pilot them through. We just have to get from one side of the storm to the other, like maybe even through the eye of the storm. And it's not a fire that we need to extinguish. And when we can think about it kind of with this metaphor, it maybe helps us access the patience that we need inside of ourselves. So even like through that actual meltdown, if you say something like, it's not my job to put out the fire, it's not my job to put out the fire, that can help us both like tolerate what's happening around us and keep us from doing the unhelpful firefighting strategies that we might be used to using that might have been used on us. And accidentally adding fuel to the fire and prolonging a meltdown without meaning to. Okay, so what can we do before the meltdown more specifically? Lots of these things are probably things you're already doing, and if you change the way that you label it out loud to your kids, you might get a little bit more credit for what's already happening. And as the caregiver in the house that feels like they're often doing like the invisible stuff, I like to take credit when I can. All right, so strategy number 1, special time. Why does special time help? Special time provides connection, and toddlers and preschoolers can have their emotional cups filled when they feel connected to their caregivers. And a full cup has more room for give when there's emotional requirements in other times of the day. Our grown-up lives are often filled with distraction and multitasking. So labeling the time out loud as this is special no phone time, and it flags it for our kids as prioritizing them. Okay, so what is that going to look like in your house? To start out, you want to choose 10 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week, whatever you feel like you can really commit to. Ideally, you can write it on a calendar where your child can see it. I'm going to talk a little bit, there's another strategy a little bit later on about written word. You want to maybe even put up a sign on the door to a private space for the rest of the family. You can make it, you can have your kid help you make it. Maybe the only person or the only thing out there to read that sign is the dog, and like, that's okay. Point it out to the dog and say, okay, this is the sign's up right now, doggy. So this is my silly example, which is something like, attention, this is Daddy and Pearl time. Do not disturb. Don't come in here right now. This is really important and we can't be interrupted. Okay, so until you've done it a couple of times, your kid knows what's cooking here. You want to maybe set a kitchen timer, something that's just for this, and it can't be a phone because again, like the phone goes plugged in, put away in the kitchen drawer, whatever it is, for 10 minutes. And you want it to be someplace where your kid can see it because time is a construct and passes differently for all of us. Until you've done it lots of times, you want to remind your child at the beginning of the special time about what it is. This is where we're taking credit. You're really important to me, and I want to make sure that the next 10 minutes are just for us. So I'm going to put my phone away, and I don't want it to interrupt our time. What are we going to do? Are we going to draw? Are we going to drive cars? Are we going to play pretend? And then whatever it is that they choose to do, we got to do it with enthusiasm, even when they want to like drive their car back and forth and put it in the parking spot and then take it out for 10 soul-crushing minutes for 3 months in a row. When the timer's done, you want to thank your kiddo. So you want to say something like, oh, I'm so glad we got to spend this time together. You're a really special child to me. In the beginning, especially if like it's been a time when their cup needs filling, they're probably going to complain about it. And this is when your calendar comes into play and maybe some of the other strategies that we'll talk about. So even if your like meltdown prevention strategy ends in a meltdown, you're still doing it right. And there's other things that we can do. All right. Next strategy is called offering control when you can. Why does this help? Kids spend a bunch of their lives, like almost all of it, with other people telling them what to do. And having a sense of self-efficacy and agency, even if like just for a couple of minutes, it can help them be more open to receiving direction the next time you need something for them, like from them. So what does this look like? I think of this one as like the what can I let go of strategy. So you want to give in when you can. You know, let them choose their own clothes. You want to let them wear their shoes on the wrong foot. You want to let them eat only grapes for dinner, even if like you went to all this trouble to make a well-balanced meal. You put everything out on the table, and they tell you they're only going to eat grapes. Instead of fighting with them about it, you just say like, okay, the rest of us are going to eat this dinner. Sounds like your body only needs grapes today. Okay, you get to decide that today. You know, like it doesn't have to happen every night, but you can say like tonight you get to choose. That's going to be okay with me. And if instead of like kind of an ad hoc way, you want to like really get more bang for your buck, the kids in charge, or maybe you can tell that your kid just really, there's been a lot of power struggles and they're fighting over things. They're fighting with you. They're putting up a fight with you over stuff that maybe they normally wouldn't. Offering them like a really concentrated amount of control can again help them let some of that stuff go. So you play what's called the kids in charge game. And until you've played it a bunch of times, again, you're going to want to kind of set it up for them. So you want to say something like, whew, sometimes it is really hard to be a kid. Someone's telling you when to get dressed, when to eat, what to eat. Oh, I remember when I was a kid feeling like that was real annoying. I was thinking we could play the kids in charge game. For the next 10 minutes, you get to be the boss. You get to be the grown-up, and I'll be the kid. I won't do anything gross or unsafe, but otherwise, I guess I'm the kid. I got to do what you tell me. And then again, you want to offer them some things that they might choose to have you do. So something like, oof, it is so warm in here. I sure hope you don't tell me to wear a sweater for the whole 10 minutes. I really hope you don't tell me to hop on one foot. That sounds so hard. And obviously they will tell you to wear a sweater and hop on one foot. And again, we're like filling up their cup of the need to have some control. And additionally, like bringing it back, this is a game where you can build in yourself some empathy for them during this time, because even though it's a game, you're going to get sweaty. It's going to feel like it kind of stinks to have them dictating to you for those 10 minutes. And so you can just, like, you each get a little bit of something. They get that sense of control. You get to remember what it feels like to be a kid, and like both of you can come to some understanding with each other. Okay, so you you've really filled their cups, and the meltdowns are inevitably still happening. And again, when we're thinking about meltdowns, we just want to remember, like, we're not here to put out the fire. We're not firefighters. We're pilots. We got to get through the storm. We don't have to put out a fire. Strategy number 1, super easy. It's called name the feeling. Why does it help? Even when kids can't say the words, they don't have that expressive language that they will develop as they get older. They have great receptive language. They understand more of what we say than what they can say back to us. And so offering them, like, over and over again, the language of emotions is going to help them going forward. You can also add in a description. That's a bonus move. What does that look like for us? That looks like when they're crying. You're really sad. You're so disappointed. You really wanted to keep going down the slide and we have to go. You're really angry. It makes you so angry when your blocks fall over. And then sometimes we don't know why they're crying. Sometimes it does not make any sense to anybody, maybe not even to themselves. And so then you can say, you know what? Something about this doesn't feel good to you. I see you. I had this on the slide, and then I was like, this doesn't quite fit with the theme, but I do still want to make sure that I say it, and I think about it a lot, and I say it to a lot of my families when we're in the office. Like, no matter what you're dealing with, if it's emotions, if it's feelings, if it's eating, like, we have to keep in mind that parenting is a long game. And in relation with, we have to, like, think about what's happening in the course of a week or a month or a year, and not necessarily in our day-to-day. Like, the day-to-day might be a grind, and it is making a difference for what's happening in the long run. So, like, in a few more years with more language, offering them that foundation of all those emotional words, you're going to hear them say it back to you. I'm really mad right now. And when they can say it, then they don't have to show it. Okay. Next strategy is to validate the feelings. So not just name it, but validate it. Why does this help? Different than a skin knee, where we can see the skin that's gone from the knee, from the body, blood's coming out. Oh, that looks like it feels pretty bad. Feelings are internal and invisible, and the external behaviors are meant to show you how badly they feel. And when kids feel understood, they don't have to show you with their actions. And that's true for grown-ups too. And conversely, when kids are invalidated, they feel the need to double down in order to be taken seriously. And so how can we do this for our kids? We say stuff like, oh, I understand when you feel mad about your brother knocking over your blocks. That would make anyone furious. It's really sad when you lose a special toy. I feel that way when I lose something too. And then again, like, sometimes we don't know why they're mad or why they're sad or what's upsetting them. And you just say, you know what, something about this doesn't feel right to you. And then the validation is the words, I believe you. Something about this doesn't feel good. I believe you. And then the next strategy is less with words and more with creativity. It's not my strongest suit, but I've been able to put it into play, and it definitely helps with kids. So why does it help? Seeing things on paper makes it feel real to kids. And even though they can't read, they like to see written words. They can see the grown-ups and their big brothers and sisters. They can see other people around them, like words and things that are written down must be important. And so they like to have something that's about that's just for them. And then this last part of it, like, it didn't really fit in with, it doesn't really have to do with meltdowns, but it fit in with the creativity component. So that's why it's here. So pictures and graphics can also help visualize schedules and ease feelings or behaviors around transitions. Okay, what does that look like? You can draw for them. What would that feel like? So, like, when one of my kids was younger and would just be crying a lot, and it was not always clear what was wrong, or most of the time it was related to his brother. And we would be sitting in the rocking chair, and one day I grabbed like the little doodle board that you can draw on, and then push the button and everything disappears, and I just started drawing. And I told him what I was drawing initially, but he got real into it and told me what to be drawing. So I was like, oh, you're so sad. This is a picture of you. There's your eyes and your hair, and oh, look at all those big tears. So many tears and so many words. You're really mad. Look at you yelling. Here's Mama. Mama loves you. She's giving you some love. And like he would cry and cry, and then he would be like, draw it again. And we would draw the same picture over and over again. And I would know that it was over when he told me to draw the stuffed dog. And then after that, like you could just feel it. Like they kind of take a deep breath, and then, then it's over. We don't have to tell them to quit crying. They just do it on their own. Okay. What else can we do for creativity? You can have them draw. You can be like, oh, quick, here's a pen. Show me on paper how angry you are. And then just describe what they're doing as they're doing it, or when it's done. Oh man, look how mad you are. That is so much anger. I see really big black strokes. That feeling is really big. And then, oof, I see your anger was so big, it made a hole in the paper. Oof, that was a big feeling. For bonus points, you can write their name on it, maybe label it as Julie's anger, rip that paper off the pad, hang it up on the wall. Later, when you're in like maybe a little bit more of a calm state, maybe when everybody's feeling a little bit better, you might notice it on the wall, you hung it on the mirror in the bathroom, you're brushing your teeth, and be like, remember earlier today you were so mad. Look at how big that anger was. You have really big feelings. I see that. What should we get for a snack? Like, you don't need to do a whole lot about it. You just want to like kind of plant those little seeds in their minds about what feelings feel like, and that feelings come and that they go, and they aren't going to like take over our lives. Okay, and then this is the picture one that didn't quite fit for meltdowns, but a visual schedule showing kind of what do we do from every day, like wherever your pinch point is. If it's like getting out the door in the morning, if it's like all this bedtime delay, you just kind of point out, like after they do their bath, you might point to it and be like, oh, I see we have to brush our teeth again. Now we have to brush our teeth and get a diaper. We really got to stay on schedule here. No more time for playing. And again, it just feels good to them to know what's coming, and to be able to see it like this is just for me. And then last set of strategies, really it's just one, is for after the meltdown, like what can we do to process our feelings? And here's where imagination really comes into effect for us. Why might it help? Toddlers and preschoolers spend a lot of time in imagination land, and they feel connected with us when we can join them in their worlds. Sometimes it's easier for them to process their feelings if they don't feel like they're the subject of a lecture or a lesson. So imagination and play kind of help take the edge off feeling too seen. Like, don't look at me so much. And what does that look like? So example would be like your kid gets sent home from school with a note that they bit somebody else during circle time. Instead of just talking about it, saying, we can't bite our friends when you get mad. Biting teeth are not for biting. Instead of saying it and making them feel like they're getting scolded, you might play it out with two dolls having a tea party, and one of them bites the other one. I feel like these kind of like play scenarios probably work best. Like they're helping us build empathy, understanding like what might be going through, reminding them that other people feel differently than they do. So this probably works best if you ask your child to take the place of somebody else by being the victim instead of the biter, for example. So your doll is the biter, and your child's doll is now getting bitten, and kind of play out what might that feel like. Do it a couple of different times so they can have an imagination about different ways that could have worked out. And if your kid doesn't play with dolls, but they do play trucks or stuffies, you can have a matchbox truck crash into another one, make it a dent, not to say like this is the same as when you bite your friend. We just have to trust that those kind of connections are going to form for them through the act of playing, which is how kids learn. Another common pretend scenario might involve two trucks or two teddies that are learning to share, these kind of things. All right, so my favorite resources. There's these two books for parents are definitely favorites for me. I've gone back to them a lot of times, and a lot of the strategies from this talk came from these books. So How to Talk So Little Kids Will Listen is by Adele Faber and Julie King, and then Good Inside with Becky Kennedy. Both have like a lot of actionable items that you can use in your day-to-day life with your kids, and like different scenarios where you can use sort of similar tools in your toolkit to how could you make that work to, again, help your kid understand their feelings better, help you be able to manage their feelings a little bit better. And then The Emotional Life of a Toddler is maybe a little bit more academic, but does have lots of little vignettes that kind of bring to life a child's development from kind of like 18 months to 3 years. And I think it gives a little bit more understanding so that we can, again, feel a little bit more empathetic to our kids. Picture books. I love picture books. All of these were read over and over in our house. Some of them feel like they were maybe better reminders for the grown-ups than they were for the kids, but put them all on your library list right away. The Rabbit Listened, When Sadness is at Your Door, and Today I Am a Monster. They're all really lovely. If you're not really into books, then I have a couple of podcasts that I like to check in on every so often. So Raising Good Humans with Dr. Eliza, Good Inside with Dr. Becky, both with ideas and strategies for helping kids raise emotionally healthy kids. And then a parenting community, biglittlefeelings.com, and they also have an Instagram feed if you like your reminders in kind of like bite-sized ways. Both all great places to go for a little bit more ideas. And then if you've tried everything above, you listened to the podcast, you read the books, you used all the tools, and we're still suffering from so many meltdowns that are making things feel like this is harder than it should be, your docs at Allegro are always here to help you. Often an initial appointment for a toddler behavioral appointment can be virtual. You can check in with your doctor about that. It's not as common for there to be medical conditions in the under 5 crowd, but once in a while. And so your doc will take a history and help evaluate or rule out any medical conditions that could be contributing, and then likely help you figure out what parent or family support group or parent coaching program would be right for you. And now I guess here we are at the end. If there's questions that are plaguing us, I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, we've got a few here. Thank you so much. So our first question that I'll ask here, and we're just about out of time, so we'll only do just a few questions here. So do you have any tips for the hitting and the biting at home, like say with mom or dad? Particularly this person's asking how not to give them too much attention for the bad behavior, how to move forward.
Yeah. I think you want to stop the biting in the moment. And then I think it probably makes the most sense if you try to teach no matter what the bad behavior is or the difficult behavior is. We don't have to label it as bad. No matter what the behavior is, you want to try to stop the behavior in the moment, and then if you try to teach right now, like their brains are not going to be receptive to that kind of lesson. And so while it may make us feel good to be like, you can't do that right now, or like if you know, in my house, it would happen like a grandparent would be watching it, and a grandparent would be like, you need to make your kid apologize right now. And to me, that doesn't teach my kid to feel feel sorry about anything but getting caught. And so if I were going to talk to my kid, I would try to do it in a place I would try to stop the biting. I would say like, no, you can't bite right now. And then I would try to take them away and like put them in a space that was by themselves and say like, something's really bothering you right now. You're feeling really upset. And like validate that they're having an experience that is coming out in a way that is hard. And you are going to say like, I can't let you bite me. I can't let you bite your sister. And you're still a good kid. And I still love you. And I'm going to help you figure out a way to be mad without hurting. And then, you work on some of the other stuff, like tell them that you're going to give them some space, and then maybe in like half an hour, come back and try to talk a little bit more about biting when it's not like so fresh in their minds, because they're not listening to you right then. They're worrying about their madness.
Awesome, thanks. Another question here is any tips for public meltdowns that are happening? Do we let it play out? Do we take them away from the situation? What are some tips for that?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it probably depends on the specific context, but like I would think, if I'm thinking of something like we're melting down at the store because we wanted something and we couldn't get it, then that I don't think I would say that you want to try to stop that right in the moment. Maybe that means that you have to leave the store, because again, you're not trying to put out the fire, you're just trying to get through the storm. Maybe that means you have to leave the store and say like, you know what, you're having too hard of a time right now. We can't stay here because this doesn't feel good for anybody. Because it doesn't feel good for them to be like out of control in front of a whole lot of other people. But you don't want to say like, you can't behave like this because we're in public, because then that gives them the message that like the problem is the feeling and not that the problem is the behavior. Like what matters the most to me, I guess that's not quite exactly what I'm thinking. What matters most to me is like what other people think about what's happening and not what's happening inside of you. And so like giving them the message that this is hard for you, and so we're gonna go, and not like you can't behave like this. It's embarrassing for all of us. But I do think that you sometimes you do have to let it play out, and like you have to imagine like I am not the only one that this happens to. Other people, most people are probably not mad about what's happening. They're like, ooh, that looks hard to be that parent. Like, at least, I mean, maybe I'm different than other people, but like when I see other people when their kids are having a meltdown in another place, I'm like, whew, that looks hard.